Alright peeps, this presentation is about sleep. This is a pretty important one. Let's dive in. So in terms of sleep, adequate sleep can be measured in terms of both quality and quantity. And sleep debt occurs when either the hours of sleep drop below the physical requirements for the individual, or the quality of sleep is consistently poor. Occasional, or what we call short-term sleep debt, can actually be made up. You can just increase sleep quantity or quality until your normal sleep habits resume. And sleepfoundation.org defines sleep deprivation or sleep insufficiency as going a whole night without sleep or sleeping very little for 1 or 2 nights. So that's a short-term thing. But even short-term sleep deprivation can lead to reduced quality of life. Some of the symptoms of sleep deprivation may be reduced alertness, slow reaction times, attention deficit, reduced cognitive ability or impaired reasoning, mood changes, even anxiety or depression, reduced sex drive, brief daytime sleep periods or microsleeps, unplanned naps, poor judgment, impaired logical reasoning, and obviously fatigue and tiredness. So sleep deprivation, or that short-term sleep insufficiency, is not the same as insomnia. Insomnia is a condition where a person consistently struggles. They can't fall asleep, or they can't stay asleep, or both. And that will also lead to daytime fatigue, difficulty concentrating, and irritability. And it actually affects about 30% of adults. So long-term sleep debt is a lot harder to overcome, and it can cause some serious health issues. It can lower your immune function. It actually decreases production of what we call defensive proteins. It can reduce production of growth hormones, which are needed to help our cells and muscles and tissues grow. It can cause dysregulation of our hormone systems. So thyroid hormone will rise, causing the thyroid to be overstimulated. Cortisol, or the stress hormone, will rise. Ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone, will be increased. And then leptin, which is the hormone that tells us when we're full, is suppressed. So those are some pretty ugly things. And then also it can lead to metabolic disorders, so impaired glucose management and insulin resistance, which contributes directly to type 2 diabetes. So we know that our sleep requirement actually varies by age. So as we start out as little babies, and infants and toddlers, we need to sleep about 2/3 of the day. And then as we get older and into adulthood, we actually only need to sleep on average about 1/3 of the day. So as adults, we need somewhere between an average of 7 to 9 hours of sleep per day. So there are 2 major categories of sleep. That is REM, or REM, which is rapid eye movement, and non-REM. And REM is the dream stage. So our eye movements become rapid, our breathing and our heart rate increase, our limb muscles are temporarily paralyzed, but they may twitch a little bit, and our brain activity is markedly increased. Non-REM sleep, on the other hand, has multiple stages. Stage 1 is where our heartbeat and our breathing slow down, our muscles start to relax, our brain produces alpha and theta waves. Stage 2, heartbeat and breathing slow even further. We have no eye movements, our body temperature drops, and our brain waves tend to spike up and down. And then stage 3, heartbeat and breathing are at their slowest rate. Again, no eye movements. Our body is fully relaxed, and we're producing delta waves in our brain. And this is actually where most of our tissue repair and growth and cell regeneration occurs, is in that non-REM stage 3. So we do cycle through REM and non-REM stages multiple times per night. Usually we have 4 to 5 full cycles lasting around 90 minutes each. And as we progress through the cycles, the time that we spend in non-REM is reduced and the time we spend in REM is increased. Each of those stages of sleep is characterized by those specific patterns of brain activity, different physiological changes, and behavior features, and these can all be measured in order to determine our sleep quality and quantity. If we do an actual sleep study called polysomnography, that's a test that's used to diagnose sleep disorders, and it's going to record multiple measurements for analysis. And some of those sleep measurement criteria are like an EEG, which measures your changes in brain waves. And this is actually one of the most robust measurement criteria. But depending on what model is used, the accuracy of the results can range anywhere from 71 to 90% accurate, or 98% accuracy. We can also measure eye movement. We can measure muscle response, or the electrical activity in our muscles in response to them being stimulated by a nerve. Accelerometers measure level of activity of the body, so body movements. And then we often also look at respiratory airflow, heart rate variability, and the oxygen levels in the blood. So if we do one of these sleep studies, it's usually conducted in a lab, which is not the best setting because the results that we get may not be as accurate or realistic as a home setting. I mean, it's not a great experience to have all these electrodes all over your head and your body, and it's not really conducive to calm, restful sleep. So, because we've all started realizing how important sleep is to our health, the market has become flooded with all of these different devices that we can use at home to measure our sleep. And they are pretty accurate, more realistic and accurate than the clinical studies. And they're also going to be more convenient and comfortable, which means we might use them more. Some of those devices could be wearables. So those are things like headbands, watches, rings, or patches. Or they could be what's called nearables, which is a device that's placed a short distance from the subject, the bed, and they use different technologies. They can use radar or microphone or film-based systems. And depending on the device and the method of technology, they may gather different types of data. So as far as the wearables, most of those can gather EEG data, which is that brainwave, SpO2, which is your oxygen in your blood, body movements, skin temperature, respiration, and heart rate. So that's a lot of stuff that can be pulled in for analysis from those little wearables. Nearables, on the other hand, tend to gather a lot fewer metrics. Mostly they can get respiration and heart rate, but the radar and microphone-based systems particularly can be interfered with very easily. The film-based systems can actually be placed in a mattress, so they're a little more accurate, but they don't tend to gather as much data or as many different metrics as the little wearables do. So if you're thinking about looking at an at-home device, it needs to provide accurate and reliable data, and you can usually look at reviews of the products and the studies that are associated with them to tell if they're reliable and accurate. You want it to be minimally intrusive. So certain people might prefer a watch or a ring or a headband. It needs to be easy to set up and use. It needs to provide a way to get the data in and out of that central platform for analysis. And it needs to be cost effective. So one of the big things that affects sleep is circadian rhythms. And these are cycles that drive our biochemical, physiological, and behavioral processes across a 24-hour day. The sleep-wake cycle is one of the most important circadian rhythms for humans. Some of the components of that are our hypothalamus, which keeps track of a master clock, and it's based on cues such as light and darkness, physical activity, and our meal schedule. And this is one reason why it's kind of important to follow a schedule with our physical activity and our meals that are somewhat similar day to day, so that it can have that little rhythm to rely on, as well as light and dark. And then melatonin levels actually rise in the evening to start making us feel sleepy. They reach a peak at 4 to 6 a.m. Sunlight will stop production of melatonin, and darkness will increase production. There are a lot of factors that can disrupt our circadian rhythms. So some of those could be genetic conditions or variations that affect production or the metabolism of certain hormones. Occupational components, like if we work shifts like a night shift, or jet lag, which is really common in airline people who travel frequently and they're crossing all these different time zones. Age, so teenagers, as we know, tend to wake up later and go to sleep later, while seniors tend to actually wake earlier and go to sleep earlier. And then certain medical conditions may contribute to circadian rhythm disorders, like autism, if we are sight impaired, we have a brain injury or tumor, certain mental health disorders, or neurodegenerative diseases. And then, of course, lifestyle behaviors and factors. Like we all know, if we're new parents, we're not getting any sleep until that infant figures out when it's time to sleep. But we can try to put in place some what we call sleep hygiene practices to at least help those with the consistency and help that sleep. One of those is to follow a regular sleep schedule. So go to bed within an hour of the same time each night and wake up within an hour of the same time each morning. Electronics is a big one. You want to turn off your electronics at least an hour before bedtime, and don't sleep with electronics near you, because the short wavelength, the EMF, and the artificial blue light will interrupt your brain. That means phones, computers, tablets, TVs. Also, you want to turn off inside lights as it begins to get dark outside. So you don't want harsh lights on inside. If it's starting to get dark outside, that's going to mess up that clock. But you can look for softer light bulbs, because we don't want to be bumping into furniture either. And you can also use red lights, which don't have the same effect as the blue light or the harsh lights. I can tell you that works, because I've replaced several of the light bulbs in my lights in my house with red lights, and that's the only thing I turn on at night. You can also reduce irregular daytime naps. I mean, if you're a napper, that's great, but again, try to build in that consistency so that your body's following that clock. Avoid activities that will raise your body temperature just before bedtime, so things like hot baths or intense exercise. Now, actually engaging in exercise or daily movement each day for at least 20 minutes is beneficial. It will help your ability to sleep, but you just don't want to do intense exercise right before you go to bed. You also want to sleep in a comfortable bed, have the room at a comfortable temperature. So 60 to 67 degrees is recommended. That may be too cold for some peeps, so make sure it's comfortable for you. Also, reduce the light and noise in your bedroom. So things like blackout curtains, if there's a lot of light coming in from outside, can help. Maybe closing doors and windows. Don't have a TV going in your bedroom, things like that. Also, don't consume caffeine or other stimulants late in the day. And avoid heavy meals, excess alcohol, and nicotine in the evening close to bedtime. So when I say excess, that obviously is going to vary by individual. So certain individuals have a bigger tolerance than others. I know people who can drink coffee at 10 o'clock at night and then go right to bed, and that's not me. If I have coffee after about 2 in the afternoon, I'm going to be up all night. So it is kind of somewhat individual. But excess amounts of sugar, caffeine, and alcohol at any point during the day can all impact sleep quality. Then we also occasionally may need to rely on sleep aids to get us back into a rhythm or to help us sleep if something's just not the way it normally is. So one of the things we can look at is herbs or botanicals, and specifically those that are considered to be relaxing nervines. And here's a list of some of them. Some cooling ones are black cohosh, skullcap, oats. Some neutral ones might be passion flower. Warming ones might be lemon balm or kava kava, lavender. You can use these as teas, tinctures, or capsules. But I do recommend, if you want to use herbs, that you work with a trained herbalist so that they can help determine the best solution for you based on energetics, but also other things that are going on with you. Be aware that some herbs may also have side effects and they may interact with medications. So you need to be careful with that. So vitamins and minerals also. Sleep issues may be caused by a deficiency or imbalance of calcium and magnesium, a deficiency of potassium, or a deficiency of certain B vitamins, or a deficiency of omega-3s. Magnesium is relaxing and antispasmodic. It's calming to the mind and muscles. It can be a very effective sleep aid. And then glycine is an amino acid shown to improve sleep, which is why a lot of times you'll see that magnesium supplement as a magnesium glycinate. So these vitamins and minerals can be taken as supplements, or they can be gotten through your foods. So if you want to increase your foods that have magnesium, look for leafy greens, summer squash, pumpkin seeds, broccoli, dark chocolate, avocado, nuts and seeds. And food sources for glycine would be meat, eggs, poultry, fish, beans and legumes, leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables, bananas, and kiwis. Then you also could look at CBD or hemp. Cannabidiol is a compound derived from hemp, and it has been shown in some studies for some people to improve sleep, especially when the sleep issues are related to anxiety. But note that there's also studies out there that have shown that it doesn't help certain people with sleep. So just be aware of that. Also, there's a lot of different products out there, so you want to do your research, and it may or may not be legal in your state. And then we talked about melatonin, which is the hormone your body naturally produces. And sometimes it can be helpful to supplement with melatonin, especially if you have a sleep cycle disorder related to, like we said, lifestyle factors like shift work or jet lag, and used for short periods of time. Then we might also be having sleep issues because there's some other underlying health issue. And if that's the case, then we probably need to address that health issue before we can moderate our sleep patterns. So some of the things that might cause sleep to be an issue are pain. If we're in pain, either acute or chronic, it's going to be hard to sleep. If we constantly have the need to urinate, we have to get up a couple times a night to go to the bathroom, then that could be related to an incontinence issue. And we can look at maybe herbs or lifestyle, like not drinking a lot of fluid before bedtime, to see if we can remedy that. Restless leg syndrome and muscle cramps are something that will wake people up a lot or interfere with sleep. In those cases, magnesium can be really helpful for that. We might also wake up because of hunger or thirst, which might indicate hormone imbalances that need to be addressed. Sleep apnea is a big one, which is a respiratory issue and needs to be addressed. And then also chronic fatigue syndrome or fibromyalgia are very often associated with sleep disorders and inability to sleep. So we need to be looking at those underlying health issues and trying to address those, and that may be through nutrition, lifestyle, supplements, herbs, maybe even pharmaceuticals. But we do need to address those root causes that are interfering with our sleep. All right, so recap. Sleep debt, even short term, can cause serious health issues, so we need to take our sleep very seriously. Multiple physiological factors can be measured to assess our sleep quality. And we can use at-home devices to do that, or we can go do a sleep study in a more clinical setting. The sleep-wake cycle is controlled by a circadian rhythm, and we know that there are a lot of different things that can disrupt that. But there are also a lot of lifestyle practices we can implement to restore our circadian rhythm. We can, short term, utilize sleep aids. They could be herbs, vitamins and minerals, or supplements like CBD or melatonin. And if we have any underlying health issues, we need to address those. So hopefully you learned something about sleep you didn't know. Maybe if you have some sleep issues, there's some tips in here that will help you. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for listening.